Hi, welcome back to another episode of Talk Connected podcast. I'm Virginia Murray. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and Talk Connected podcast is really just a space to connect with everyday real life people going through real life challenges. We hope to inspire, empower, inform, right? And just educate on the topics of mental health and emotional well being. So, last week's episode, we asked the question, are you a cycle breaker? We talked about what it means to be a cycle breaker. We talked about how to become a cycle breaker, and basically what a cycle breaker is. And you have to tune into the episode, our last episode to really break it down and understand it. But the general, gist of what a cycle breaker is someone that has experienced recurring patterns of negative things, whether it be defense mechanisms of avoidance or emotional dysregulation in their household. And they are just saying no more to receiving, those negative patterns, or because they have learned them in their environment and growing up with them, and no more giving it out where it's disrupting different relationship dynamics that you have in your life. A cycle breaker is one that is out to create change. So, take a look at that episode as well as the other episodes we have because it's really some good stuff going on. So, today's topic that we're going to talk about is understanding grief, right? Grief is a difficult, very layered topic. So, we will kind of just dive into understanding grief, what it is, how can we navigate it, how we can support ourselves, how we can support other people going through grief without overstepping. But before we do that, grief can be a heavy topic to invite into discussion. So if you ever, during the course of this podcast, need to pause, if you need to stop it and get yourself into a healthy position to be able to come back to it and continue, please do so. Speaking of check-ins, though, let me ask you, have you checked in on yourself today? What is a check-in? Every episode we like to kind of, look at what a check-in is, which is a moment of reflection to ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Not today, not this week, not how was I feeling yesterday? How am I feeling right now? And is there something that I could give myself in this moment or plan throughout my day to give myself that does not feel like a chore, but it feels like stress management and decompression? Right? Is there a way to take my negative emotions of stress or overwhelm and bring them from here to here? And if they are already here, is there something that I can do for myself that maintains my good, healthy place? So, if you need to take a second to pause this podcast, please do so to take a reflective moment to check in on yourself. If you are feeling okay, then we are going to continue. So, what is grief? Grief is a natural emotional response to a loss of some sort. And when we talk about what loss is, there can be many different categories of loss. So, one of the first loss is, the passing of a loved one, a friend, or an acquaintance, right? The second type of grief can be loss of a relationship, whether it be partner or it be a long time friend that you had, and that relationship just dissipated and maybe you no longer talk, you've traveled down different paths of life, and it really hurts your heart and it makes you sad because at one point or time that person was a very important piece to your life, you know another type of loss can be divorce or separation. This is a type of loss because through a marriage or, long-term marriage, short-term marriage, you have gotten to know someone and you have integrated them into your life. And now because that relationship has separated, there is a loss of something. There is no longer that integration of that other person or the family dynamic, the way that it was integrated into your life. It's no longer present. So there is a loss there. Other forms of grief, could be recurring grief or complicated grief. And this can be grief to whereas you are recurring over and over and over again within a short span of time, or even let's just say the span of a year or 2 years. You are just experiencing recurring loss after loss after loss after loss. Let's just say maybe you lost two people who passed away, and then a friendship was lost, and then you lost your job, and then you lost, something else in your life. It's just recurring, complicated grief to whereas you feel like it's just one thing after another and it's just building up. Complicated layers of grief. There's another type of grief that is often brought up, to whereas it serves as sort of like a third party grief, right? So hypothetically, so many times I've heard someone say, I was scrolling through my timeline on social media all week, and it's just been loss after loss after loss of three people I went to school with, one person that I know, their cousin that I had met one time, or the two social media friends. It's just loss after loss after loss that I'm seeing on my timeline. And our brain and our body is responding to just the concept of seeing loss after loss after loss. And maybe you had connection with these people or maybe not, but it's your timeline on your social media, and it's just constantly pressing the button of loss. So it kind of connects into kind of like this third party feeling of grief. And so how does all this grief affect us, right? So the way that grief affects us is that it just can create a irreplaceable void in our lives. And when we say it creates an irreplaceable void in our lives, let's use this example. So if your mother or father or a grandparent that you had a good, close relationship with passes away, can that person ever be replaced in your life? No. No one can ever fill that void, that space that that person had in your life. You can have motherly or fatherly figures. You can have mentors. You can have people come into your life with certain traits or characteristics or aspects of, what that person that passed away had, but they can never fill the role that that loved one had in your life. And so a lot of times, people talk about this as a feeling of emptiness. I feel a emptiness where my loved one, was in the role and position that they had in my life, but it's no longer there. And a part of that is adjusting to learning how to live without that person in that role in your life. And that's where people kind of, in grief, have you ever heard people say, just everything's, I don't know. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out, you know? And that's something that we'll get into when we talk about how do we support ourselves and how do we support other people through grief, because that I don't know is going to come up a lot. And sometimes we have to respect that. We have to respect that. Right? How else does grief affect us? It just creates this large adjusting and transitional phase in our lives where imagine just going through life, for years with certain things or certain people, and that becomes your new normal. And like we said, like your life just becomes this one thing, and you're going down the road, and then all of a sudden, it's not a fork in the road, right? You don't get to choose which way something or someone was taken away from you, and now you're being forced to turn left. And I know the road that I was going this way, but when I turn left, it's so full of uncertainties. And I don't have that person that was riding with me on the journey of life. I don't have that person that was in the passenger seat. I don't have that person that I leaned on or I could depend on to travel down this new road of uncertainty in my life. I don't know if it's a twist, a turn, a bend. I don't know if, what's on that road. I have to figure it out and I have to learn it. And that can be very confusing. You know, I cannot, I can't call that person. I can't text that person. I can't share my moments of joy with that person. I can't share my moments of sadness with that one person that I could, rely on or that I had access to. I no longer have access to them. And all I know in this time and in this moment and in this space is that my heart hurts. Some people, when they see the left turn in the road, they don't even want to start driving. They don't want to start driving. Forget the uncertainties of while I am driving on it. I don't even want to start driving. I don't even want to turn my car on. I just want to stay right here. And sometimes when people say, I just want to stay right here after they've experienced a loss or they've experienced grief, a lot of times it is connected to, I don't want to move on because if I move on, I feel like I am forgetting them. If I come into the acceptance of their loss, I feel like I'm forgetting them and I'm moving on from them. But can I encourage you and tell you that that's not what that means? It just means that you're remembering in a different way. So I'm not remembering the loss of that person. I'm remembering the life that we shared together. I'm holding on to the good moments. I'm holding on to the moments of growth and love and development by choosing to accept the changes that have occurred in my life that I didn't have any control over. And that's the worst part about it. Grief makes you feel like you have to try to control something that you have no control over. Grief looks different for everyone. Grief is different for everyone. No two people will grieve the same. Even if two people are crying, no two people will grieve the same. And that is why, it's okay for if someone is not crying. It's okay if someone doesn't grieve the way that you think they're supposed to grieve, because we have no idea what they're feeling on the inside. We have no idea what they are experiencing. Some of us are very, very good at putting a mask on. Some of us are very, very good at tucking things in to where other people won't see. Some of us are very good at numbing ourselves. Even the people that you see crying. You ever heard that expression, check on your strong friends? Typically, the people that you see are, numb. Typically, the people that you see not crying through grief are the people that are internalizing their emotions and feelings. Number one, because they may not know what to do with them. Number two, because they've always been the strong friend. Number three, because they always feel like they have to carry things and just keep going. But everyone grieves different when it comes to a loss. Always give grace because you never know how people are handling things internally and inside of them. It's a skill to know not how to internalize emotions and feelings, but to be able to have true emotional expression of feeling on the outside and be able to put yourself in that vulnerable place. A lot of times, people have difficulties navigating spaces of vulnerability because at one point in time or another, you have been disappointed, you've been hurt, you tried to be vulnerable, but someone took advantage of it, and now you feel like you have to hold everything inside. Well, can I just encourage you and tell you that that one moment or multiple moments where someone may have hurt you or disappoint you does not define and does not mean that you have to now carry everything that you go through on the inside. But it means finding appropriate and good people in our lives and have them in our environments that we can open up to and be vulnerable. That takes us into our next subject matter, which is how can I support myself through grief? Finding people we can depend on, people that we can be vulnerable with, people that we can talk to, right? And yes, counselor, therapist, absolutely. That's an unbiased support system to help you navigate the grief that you're going through. Counselors and therapists will be some of your biggest support people. I speak for myself when I say I genuinely, from my heart, care about the people who entrust me to help them journey and navigate their emotions and feelings and thoughts, because those are some of the most interconnected, important, and special pieces of ourselves. So, therapists, counselors can be awesome support systems. Finding friends or family or someone that you feel is close to you, and has the capacity to help support you on your journey. A lot of times when people go through grief or when people go through challenges, this is the one thing that I run into a lot. How many times when we go into something, I'll tell you, I've even done it myself. I've gone through a challenge and then I turned off my phone. I went home. I don't want to talk to nobody. I just want to be alone right now and process and reflect. Now, there's a healthy position that you can put yourself in being alone, because sometimes we do need to be alone with our own thoughts to reflect. But don't get stuck there. Don't stay there. Take them as moments. We do need moments, especially through grief, where we have to take moments for ourselves to reflect and process what is happening in our lives. We do. We need moments where we can understand, but don't get stuck there, meaning don't stay there too long in those moments by yourself. And don't create a pattern of recurring moments where you're just, now I've been in my house for days. I just go to work and I come home. I don't talk to nobody. My phone's been off for days. I'm not answering anybody's text. I'm not answering anybody's phone calls. I'm not going out with anyone. I don't want to do anything. That is not healthy. That is isolation. There is a difference between moments of reflection and processing by yourself to be alone versus isolation. Isolation is when you are cutting all of the healthy things out of your life because you are not dealing with something that is happening in your life or a change that has occurred, like grief. You're not dealing with it in a good manner. Sometimes when we go through challenges in life, it is a normal response to want to just, I need time to think. I don't want to, I need to disconnect. Right. But what I so oftentimes encourage people and I say to people is when you are going through a challenge, that is the best time to reach out to someone, not to run and isolate. When you're going through something, that is when you need someone to lean on the most because something is being taken from you. And we need people around us that can overflow their support and pour into us. We can't give them what we are going through, but there is something about in our weakness, in our vulnerability, when we have the right people around us, the right people will pour into us when we don't have the ability to pour into us ourselves. We need that at certain points in our lives. So I encourage you, if you are going through something right now, if you are going through a struggle, a challenge, if you are experiencing a loss in any form or fashion, if you are going through something to whereas you feel a weaker spot in your life, you feel like you're in a vulnerable place, I encourage you not to isolate. Because when you isolate and you cannot pour into yourself, we need those people around us that can pour into us. And I get it, not everybody has someone, right? Which is why one of the things that I said is a therapist or counselor will be one of your biggest supports. Because if you don't have family, if you don't have friends, if you don't have anyone yet in your life where you can turn to, there is support somewhere. And I say yet because we are not meant to be alone or by ourselves on this journey of life. We are meant to connect with people. We are meant to collaborate with people. We are meant to pour into others, and others are meant to pour into us. There is no way over the years that you have for your life that you are supposed to do this thing alone. So I say yet. If you don't have anyone in your life yet, my hope for you is that you will find people that you can connect with, that are good, healthy people for you, and that you find a good, healthy sense of self so that when healthy meets healthy, connection and collaboration and support and love and grace flows from that relationship. So, how can you support yourself through this journey? Is finding support. You are not alone and you do not have to be alone. How else you can support yourself is you can learn how to cope. What are healthy things that I can do in order to turn this around for myself? Healthy things, habits that I can build up. Have you ever gone through a heartbreak and, you spent your time in sadness? You spent your time feeling like, my heart hurts and my heart is breaking. But then after a while, when you started to accept the situation for what the situation is, because that is, just finding clarity. When you start to realize that I don't need to find any answers in whatever situation, whatever person, I don't have to, go looking for, anything. The way that I find resolution and healing in a situation is that I need to learn how to accept the circumstances for what they are, right? If I can learn to accept the adjustment and transition in my life for what it is, especially if there's been a breakup, or you've gone through something in a relationship, when I can find resolution and acceptance for what the situation is, then all of a sudden there's like this glow up, right? All of a sudden you start going back to the gym and you start getting back fine and you start taking care of yourself better, and after a while you look great, you feel great, you're doing great, right? That is finding and learning how to cope in healthy ways. Sometimes when people are going through things, they choose the unhealthy things. And unfortunately, that is so normal, right? We choose unhealthy things, whether it be diving into like loads of sweets or overeating with the snacks and just like everything that we see, and everything. There's nothing wrong with sweets, right? There's nothing wrong with food. I love food. I am one of the biggest foodies that you will ever meet, okay? But we have to take things in moderation. You have to take things in moderation. If you find that you are just indulging in sweets or overeating and it's connected to a loss in your life or a sadness in your life, or something has happened that has caused a change in your life, then you have picked up a unhealthy habit that you are literally feeding into the negative things, and you will be stuck in knowing how to get out of that space because that food becomes a comfort. Those sweets become a comfort. The unhealthy things that we begin doing just to find dissociation or disconnection from that thing because I don't want to feel it. That's why people pick up unhealthy patterns and behaviors, unhealthy habits. because there's something that I don't want to feel. Something happened in my life to whereas when I do this unhealthy thing, it disconnects me from the feeling of what happened. I don't like that feeling, so I'm going to do this thing. If something stresses me out, I'm going to go do this thing because it offers relief and it feels good. But I want you to know that unhealthy habits that you pick up are temporary relief. When we engage in healthy coping skills, it is long-term relief and even freedom because then we know how to transition and adjust effectively enough to learn how to live with whatever environment that we're in, right? So, how do I support myself through grief? Finding the right people and learning ways to cope in a healthy way that's going to lead to effective long term results. How do I help support someone else? This is so, so tricky. And this has been coming up a lot more lately, right? Because it's easier sometimes to connect into what we may need, and we feel helpless trying to navigate other people's needs sometimes. The first thing that I tell people when it comes to how can I support others going through some kind of loss or some type of grief, it is to ask and to listen. Because if we do not ask and if we do not listen, sometimes we can push people away, right? So if someone is going through a loss or a grief, sometimes it's okay to reach out and check on them and say, hey, is there anything that you may need right now? If they say no or I don't know, you should listen to them. Because hypothetically, if they say no or I don't know, when someone says I don't know, it means that they have some reflecting and processing to do to figure out what they need so that they can communicate it to you. And if someone says no or I don't know, a great response to that is, okay, well, if you find out or if you need anything from me and it's in my capacity and I can give it to you, please let me know and I'll be there for you. That's it. Because if they figure out after processing and reflecting what it is they need and you can provide it to them, they know that that door is always open to come and speak to you and ask you. And they may not need anything but a conversation after they've kind of wrapped their minds around the reality of what has happened in their lives. Sometimes, a lot of times, when people are in grieving moments or moments of loss, no matter what type, sometimes when they wrap their minds around the reality of it, sometimes they just need someone to talk to that they feel safe with. They just need to hear an encouraging word. They just need to be poured into effectively, just a little bit. And sometimes they may not even need a conversation. Sometimes they just may need to talk and just have someone listen. I've even heard people say, I didn't even want to talk. I didn't want that person to listen to me. I just wanted to be in that person's presence. I just wanted to feel another presence of a person that I trusted next to me. So we took a nap on the couch. That's it. When that person really ties into understanding what they need, they will let you know, you know? And there's nothing wrong with following up with them and say, "Hey, just checking on you. I just wanted to remind you if you need anything, I'm here for you." Right? "Hey, have you eaten? Can I bring you something to eat? Is that okay?" That's it. Just the little things. We don't have to overdo anything because if someone says no, and if someone needs time to process or reflect or really grasp a reality of the loss that has occurred in their lives, if we are pushy with them, and we are calling them, we're like, hey, I'm coming over your house. Hey, did you get this that I sent? Did you get that I sent? Did you get, I have had someone say before, like, it was overwhelming and it made me want to isolate even more. Now, that's not going to be the case for everyone, right? Because you uniquely know the people in your lives, right? But sometimes I encourage you to ask and listen, because when we are going through a grieving process or a process of loss, sometimes we step aside from ourselves. I'm pretty sure, a lot of us can connect with, if you've known someone who maybe have, gone through a grieving period, we have noticed different behaviors and patterns from those people, whether it be they were very responsible in a lot of ways, and all of a sudden now they're becoming impulsive. Now they are just doing things that they would have never done before. Now they are saying things that they never have done before. Now they went from one of the most peaceful, calmest, laid back people that you know, and now they are just angry all the time. They are snapping on everyone. They are irritated. They are angry. Grief can change you depending on what type of grief or what type of loss you go through, depending on, how close that relationship was. It can change a person, you know, temporarily, because grief can also, tie into depression oftentimes. There's just this heaviness, this sadness, this irritation, this anger, this lack of motivation to do anything that we used to find interest or pleasure in doing. Now I don't want to do any of that. You really step beside who you really are, and there are symptoms of depression now that are really intertwining with your grief or even anxiety. I wasn't anxious about this before. And now I'm thinking about, well, what if another person I could lose? Or what if that person I could lose? Or that person told me they had these symptoms. And now it just brings up different symptoms of anxiety and emotions that were never there because of your experience that you had with one circumstance or one person. Grief kind of intertwines and can tie into anxiety or depression. That is why it is very important to ask and to listen and check in. We don't have to be pushy and we don't have to check in 3 times a day. It could just be a text message. Hi, I hope that you're okay. I'm thinking of you today. Or kind of like we said, have you eaten today? Do you need anything? Okay, well, please let me know if you do. I'm here for you if you need me to the best of my ability. And if you are supporting someone that is going through grief, always check in on yourself if you are a support system. You're now semi stepping into the role, depending on who you're supporting, right? Partial, like a partial caregiver. If you're making sure they're eating, or you're showing up for them, or you're doing them services, or, you're just helping them take care of themselves, or maybe their home, make sure that you are taking care of you as you navigate supporting taking care of someone else, because you also have your life to take care of and live. So now not only are you taking care of you and all of your responsibilities and priorities, but now sometimes we step into the role of supporting and taking care of other things in someone else's life that may have a moment of weakness or vulnerability in their life because of grief or loss. So you're trying to balance taking care of you and your life and your responsibilities and support someone else. Take care of yourself, because it can cause burnout. It can cause burnout. You are outputting more physical, emotional, and mental energy than if you were just taking care of your life and what you're trying to maintain a healthy in your life. It can cause burnout. Physically, if you're physically doing things and taking care of responsibilities, mentally and emotionally, if you are supporting and navigating grief with someone. Because remember, we talked about that, the social media post of seeing it, and it's not your grief per se, but it just feels like it's connected to you because it's on your timeline and it's just one thing after another, right? When we are supporting someone navigating grief, sometimes we are having conversations with them, and they may be recurring conversations. They may be sending us pictures of a loved one who passed, daily or weekly. They may be sending text messages saying how much they miss that person. And that can really, take a lot mentally and emotionally to show up for that person and be present with that person and engage in discussing their loss. And now you're exposed to hearing about a trauma that someone has gone through, a loss they have gone through over and over and over again. You must take care of yourself. Make sure that you are in a healthy position to be able to continue to show up for your loved one the way that they need you to show up. And it is very important that if you do not have the capacity, number one, gently communicate that. And when I say gently communicate it, it could be something along the lines of, hey, I had a rough day today, so I'm not going to be able to give you a call. However, I can't wait to talk to you tomorrow. I hope that, your day's a little bit better today. And then you take that time and that night for you and build yourself up. And that doesn't include emergencies, because if an emergency comes up with that person or a crisis, of course, number one, you're going to want to support them. And number two, lead them into a support system for any type of crises that they may be going through. Because we are not, friends, family members. They are not therapists. They are not counselors. Sometimes we need to connect people with the right people that can connect to whatever crises they may be going through. Um, so take care of yourself. That is one way of how you can support other people, making sure you're in a good, healthy place, making sure you have the capacity. Don't give people what they didn't ask for if they do not need it and it's not going to help. And the biggest one is to ask and to listen, right? Ask and listen. And that's also important, vice versa. If we're going through or experiencing a loss, we also want to be cognizant on if other people have the capacity. So sometimes, it's okay. Like if we've lost a relationship or if we have lost a dear friendship to us, it's very important to ask another person like, hey, I really want to talk about like how the friendship dissipated between me and, whoever. Do you have time to talk? Are you feeling okay to talk about it? Because I've just been having some heavy things on my heart or my mind, and I really would love someone to talk to about it. Make sure other people in our lives have the capacity to handle the emotional, baggage that sometimes we go through because life and the ebbs and flows of life, the valleys and the mountains of life, valleys and mountains of life, different things that can happen that we go through. We want to make sure our support system has the capacity to take that on. I'll give you an example. I have a book. It's called The Completion of Self, by Virginia Murray, was me. And in that book, I give an example of, have you ever been in a situation where one of your friends was maybe going through a breakup, right? With their boyfriend, a girlfriend, they're going through a breakup and they're sad and they're calling you to talk about it and you're giving them all this advice and you're pouring into them. And then all of a sudden they're back with this person and then they're telling you how great it is, but then they're complaining about that person. And then they go into another breakup and that person's just calling you every day, because you're friends and some friends do talk every day, even if briefly. They're calling you every day or multiple times throughout the week, and it's about the same issues, and you keep encouraging and you keep pouring in. Eventually, you're going to get burnt out because you no longer have the capacity to be in a negative cycle with them. What you're going to start seeing their name pop up on your phone and not answering the call and maybe texting them, hey girl, I'll talk to you later. You might see a text and then all of a sudden you're responding to it the next day, and it's out of the normal patterns of the relationship, of the friendship, because you are burnt out from being in that cycle and pattern of not having the capacity to help someone. Right? Now, that's not the same as grief and loss. We're not comparing someone's up and downs of a relationship to grief and loss. That's simply an example of how we can get burnt out if we don't have the capacity to continue to help someone navigate their challenges in life. That is why we need to take care of ourselves if we are helping someone else, and someone else needs to take care of themselves if they are helping us, because there should be some kind of pouring into. No one should be depleted. No one should be getting burnt out. And that's why therapy, is really good. Having a counselor, having a therapist is really good, not only for the person that is experiencing the grief or the loss, but therapy and a counselor can be really, really beneficial for someone supporting someone going through grief and loss, because you don't have to do it by yourself. If you're just like, okay, I know to ask and listen, I know not to be too invasive, I know that this person can, step aside and really just start doing things that are beyond them, and that's not who they are, who can I talk to that may understand grief or, this topic, to help me navigate helping that person get through what they're going through and making sure that I'm okay as, I'm helping them navigate it. So today, we learned a little bit about what navigating and understanding grief looks like. We learned, what is grief? And we said it's that natural emotional response and feeling to a loss of some sort. We talked about the different types of loss, right? And some of those different types of loss are the passing of a loved one, friend, or acquaintance. There's the loss of a relationship, whether it be friendship or intimate relationship. It can be divorce or separation. Grief can also be recurring or complicated and layered. There can also be third-party connections to the feelings of grief. We talked about the social media posts. So we also discussed how grief affects us and how we can support ourselves and how we can support other people. So I truly hope that you got something out of this podcast today. I encourage you, after today's episode on understanding and navigating grief, I truly, truly encourage you to check in on yourself, see how you're feeling, and have something healthy for you to do. Step outside and get some air, you know, um, take a nice hot bubble bath with that. I always like my candle and my good playlist on. Do whatever is going to read a book, paint, journal. Journaling is one of my favorite things to do, because when you are, even if you're in therapy, right? A lot of people talk to their therapist once a week or once every other week. Some people would check in with their therapist twice a week, but the other days, am I spending time processing and writing in my journal about how I feel, right? Am I processing my emotions and my feelings? A lot of times journaling is a beautiful way to get our thoughts out of our mind, off our shoulders, out of our hearts, and to just put them on paper where we can visibly see them. It is a great processing tool, because as we're writing and as we're reading, our brains are reflecting, our brains are going through the process and understanding what things mean and understanding why we feel this way, why we may have had those thoughts. And if you're in therapy, I encourage you to take your journal reflections into therapy. I love it when my clients say, "Hey, I wrote something in my journal. Can I read it to you?" I'm like, "Absolutely. Yes, number one, I love the fact that you trust me enough to be vulnerable with me about your inner thoughts and what you've been carrying. Number two, I love the fact that you're processing, So please, if you have a therapist or a counselor, take your journal writings into therapy if you feel safe there. It is a great way to find deeper understanding and get a different perception on, your thoughts or your feelings of what you're going through. So I encourage you when this episode ends to go do something beneficial and healthy for you as a way to decompress, as a way to, if this topic of grief was a little heavy for you, I encourage you to go do something that you can decompress from, something that's going to pour into you. And if you don't know what that is right now, step outside and take a couple breaths. Think about a good memory. Pick up the phone and talk to a loved one and have a meaningful conversation with them. So I hope that there was something that you got out of this podcast episode. I want to encourage anyone that is struggling or going through grief at the moment. I just want to encourage you that pain and heartbreak, it's devastating, but it doesn't last forever. My hope for you is that you will get to a point where you can continue to take steps in your life under the acceptance of the circumstance for what it really is. And that it's not forgetting that loved one that has passed, but it is just remembering them in a better way that you're able to be more effective and function in life better. No one can ever feel that spot or that void, and no one ever will. But hold on to the memories that you have with that loved one. Hold on to the times that you spent. It's not about the regrets that we have in life of what we didn't get a chance to do. It's about holding on to the memories of the things that we did get a chance to do, because those are meaningful and so valuable to us in our lives. This too will pass, and you will be okay, and you will continue to be intentional in your life because you still have purpose. Continue to take your steps in life and just continue to be encouraged yet the more. I hope everyone has a beautiful, awesome day, and I'll talk to you next time.